Well, thank you so much for coming to my talk, and especially want to thank Joseph and Gio for giving me this opportunity for presentation. Today I want to talk about my work as well as my experience of making sculpture in Jingdezhen, China. So that's the sculpture housed in this immersive shrine that I built. So right now there's an exhibition going on at Argus 2 building, which I will talk about later. But there's this installation where you can go inside. So this is a shrine that I built, which houses that Guanyin sculpture. But you can go inside, and it's a quite interactive environment. It'd be great if you could stop by.
Did you say Argus 2 building?
Argus 2 building, yeah. And I guess like I want to introduce like some of the things that I do as an artist, so that I think it'll give you a little more it'll give you more contextual information of where I'm coming from in relation to how I came to create this sculpture. So prior to coming to University of Michigan, my work really focused on investigating government secrets and that sort of things through my creative practice. And I was using art as a way to increase visibility of like secret documents, like classified information. And between 2004 and 2006, I was drafted into Korean military, and during that time, my job was a translator, and I was translating all this classified information for the military, and that's when I developed my interest in secret information. And a couple of years later, coming out of military, I watched this interview with Julian Assange, who founded WikiLeaks. He was talking about how disappointed he was with public's general lack of interest in all these secret documents. So people really scream for truth on social network, but then again, in real life, people really don't go to these these websites and access all these secret documents. So I went onto these WikiLeaks and then found out that a lot of these documents are in like raw data form. They're not interesting to read. There are a lot of there's a lot of information. There's no entertaining narrative attached to them.
Mm-hmm.
So as a painter, I began thinking about how can I make interesting paintings so I can increase visibility of this information. So I ended up looking up all this government information, and I came across some weird information. For example, like this one. This is an image that came from one of the documents that I was looking at. So in the 60s, United States Air Force used to develop like a saucer type, like a UFO type aircraft. As difficult as it is to believe, there are documents, and I find it quite fascinating how. So when I show my work, so this is the painting that I created based on that specific document, and it's all like this surreal like. Mixture of information based on the information I gathered from these documents. And I find it quite interesting when I present the document to the viewer, people still have a hard time believing them. Like I show them, hey, here's the document, here's the government published document, but it's really hard to make people believe. And this painting deals with there's a music torture program at Guantanamo Bay prison. They're utilizing music as a way to get information from prisoners. And one of the songs that people use to get information out of prisoners is Sesame Street theme song. Come and play where everything's okay. That song. You play that song over and over again for the duration of 1 week, 2 weeks, you will break down. Even though you don't know anything, you will make up things to stop the music. So that's what's going on, and like these things are hard to believe, but these are things that are happening, and all written in documents, but people have a hard time believing that these things are real. Like this one deals with, so the CIA has program called Extraordinary Rendition Program, which allows CIA agents to kidnap people of interest to secret locations, like these secret locations all over the world for interrogation and whatnot. So as a foreigner coming to the University of Michigan for MFA program, one of the things that I noticed about American culture was this culture of remakes. In the 90s, and people used to watch in the States, actually used to watch American foreign films with subtitles. So 10% of the market share used to be foreign films, like in their original form, not remakes, with subtitles. But that number has dropped to 0.7% now. So only 0.7% of the market box office films are foreign films in their original forms. I find it quite fascinating. Like, why is it so difficult to appreciate, foreign contents in their original form? Oftentimes, I think I don't know why, but it's fascinating how foreign contents really don't have a place in this culture unless they are sort of remade with American cast, speaking American English, eating American food, everything. So, like all these Asian characters are replaced with American actors. I mean, if it's, I appreciate this culture of remakes in different cultures, remake things from different cultures. It's a transnational dialogue, but then again, I sometimes wonder when only 0.7% of the content you see here are actually foreign in their original form. I sometimes question. So this is how so that's how I became interested in this culture of remakes. As an Asian artist working in the States, living in the States, I wondered. So what is this culture of remake? Is it all negative, or what does it do? So as a painter, I started to. So I thought about how can I tackle this issue and research this issue as a painter. So I started to look at sort of the Western painters that I looked up to as a student. And Alex Kaz, Ellsworth Kelly, Frank Stella, Lucian Freud, all these Western artists. So as an Asian artist living in Western culture, I thought about what does it do when I remake their paintings? What does it do? What sort of cultural meaning does it produce? So I took, for example, this one, I took a lithograph by Ellsworth Kelly, green white, and I rotated it because to me it looks like sort of like a landscape. This green, and I populated it with anime character. So it's like I'm injecting this anime aesthetic into Western iconic images, right? Trying to see what I can do with it. And there's this another example. This is Lucian Freud. Flora with blue toenails is the title of this piece, and I injected, of course, anime aesthetics, and I created this painting. So, I'm interested in how this process of remake either update, defamiliarize, or destabilize these original works by, really introducing Asian visual elements, and you might be wondering, so then why do I use anime? So I'm trying to get to the sculpture pretty soon. So first reason is that anime represents contemporary Asian language. It's not old Asia, but it's contemporary. It's present. It's now. I like that aspect. And as a Korean artist, utilizing the language of Japanese culture, I'm interested in this this post-colonial aspect of this visual language. Like since the 60s, a lot of anime films were outsourced to Korea, and it's interesting that in some cases, a lot of the names of the Korean animators were replaced with fictitious Japanese names after production in order to maintain this authentic Japanese brand for these films. And I was also, so I was in, like Ji-young said in her introduction, I was just in a biennial art show where they had artists who are Murakami Takashi's proteges, and I asked them, like when we were having dinner, I asked them, why do you use anime in your work? And their answer was, because it's Japanese. It was plain and it didn't get much further than that. But one of the philosophers that I enjoy listening to and reading is Slavoj Zizek. He's a Slovenian philosopher, and he talks about this relationship that the British has with the language English. It talks about how, as English become lingua franca all over the world, this authentic tie, this ownership that the British has over this language gets diluted. Now you have American English, Australian English, Singaporean English, Indian English, so that authentic tie gets diluted as the globalization spreads all over the world. So I want to do similar thing with anime, although it is, anime is a very globalized language, but still it is heavily tied to Japanese culture. So I want to dilute that tie. And also, anime faces, anime aesthetics, when you look at their faces, it's quite interesting. You have bug eyes, you have button nose, you have tiny lips. So, if you think about these things in real life, walking around, it's scary, it's like, all I can see is their eyes. But I was wondering, but we do find them appealing and pretty and cute. How is that possible? It tells you something about our perception of beauty and what we idealize. So and there are some people who are actually married to anime characters. They went through actual ceremonies and they're married to these characters, these fictitious things. So they'll print images of characters on pillow and have an actual marital. I don't want to go there. So I was just talking about how anime represents this contemporary Asian aesthetics and my interest in it. So as a boy growing up in Korea, I was raised as a Buddhist, and every time I went to temple, I was looking at these Buddhist Buddha sculptures. Often I wondered, how come fashion changes every month, but Buddha is always the same? It's like this homeostasis. And it's always the same robe and same face. Like, I was like, why? Like, this, when you look at their faces, I don't know, there's something about them seem very frozen to me. So I started looking into the history of, how the transformation of Buddhist sculptures took place, starting from India, going to Tibet, China, Korea, Japan, this Buddhist aesthetics, there's this syncretization, this marriage between the Buddhist aesthetic, and the local cultures. It really takes place, and there's transformation, subtle, but so what's interesting is that when you look at not bodhisattvas, but like Buddha sculptures, everything else stays pretty much the same. There's these physical attributes, long ears, webbed fingers, and this hairstyle, it's always the same. But the facial feature changes. So each each different faces represent what we saw as beautiful in specific time. So Guanyin, it means, of course you all know, one who perceives the world's limitations, always seeing, always knowing, always there. And it's also Guanyin is also my favorite Bodhisattva. I pray to Guanyin, not Buddha. I feel like she will grant me wishes. I don't know why, but my mom says so. And also canon. This is actually Japanese word for Guanyin. So it's always there. It's hidden in plain sight, but it's always there. So when you look at, some guys show you the transformation of Guanyin sculptures from India to different dynasties in Asia, in East Asian countries. So that's Gandhara. So it's depicted as a Indian prince, and as you can see, it's male. And it goes to China, Yodomei dynasty, and it's still male figure. So Bodhisattva is a little different from other Buddha sculptures. They really, there's a lot of transformation that takes place even with the robes and the clothes, and everything about them changes over time because they're not. They're more open to interpretations in different cultures. Like people. So when you have a local deity, like especially in China, when you have a goddess of compassion, so there's this combination that takes place between the Buddhist Guanyin and the Chinese goddess of compassion that takes place. So that form is more fluid in Bodhisattvas. So Sui dynasty. This is Korea. This is Baekje dynasty. Japan, Nara period, Guanyin, Kuru dynasty. They're all male. Until you get to Song dynasty and Yuan dynasty, they become feminized. They have more female features. In the Ming dynasty, very feminine. Makes me almost think about like Virgin Mary in some ways. Qing dynasty, very feminine, very decorative. But this is sort of when that transformation comes to a halt, with the modernity and modernization in Asia, colonial era. That sort of transformation stops here. Coming to University of Michigan, I was given a chance to conduct international research anywhere in the world. And after careful consideration, I found out about Jingdezhen. I've been doing research and I found out about Jingdezhen. Jingdezhen was a fascinating place for me because it's known to be this site for manufacturing revolutionary sculptures like Mao statues, as well as Taoist and also Buddhist sculptures for centuries. And also, I chose to go to China because specifically I was curious about this one question that I had in mind, which was, so during the Cultural Revolution, 4 olds were banned, old customs, old culture, old habits, old things in general. And I was wondering how does this knowledge about sculpture making survive this gap, this sort of rupture? Like how do you maintain this knowledge when the government stops you from making old things? And also something I want to add before I go further is that when there are a lot of sculptures that were destroyed during this Cultural Revolution, but then again, there were so many sculptures available, so that they got to a point where they don't have to destroy the whole sculpture, but as long as they destroy the heads, it's considered to be destroyed because there's no heads. So going back to what I brought up earlier about the importance of facial features. So when you erase the face, you basically erase the whole sculpture. That was the idea. So I conducted some interviews with the people, artisans who lived during the Cultural Revolution. And I asked them, so how did you maintain this knowledge about sculpture making and how to make these forms? They said, their answer was quite interesting to me because they said, so they actually continued making old sculptures, but they just changed the pattern on the sculptures when they were painting them. So instead of utilizing the traditional old patterns, they changed the pattern when they're painting those sculptures. So as to make them new. So a subtle change can really update, these sculptures and not make them seem old. I find that quite fascinating. So that's Jingdezhen. Jingdezhen. This photo I took at the royal kiln site. So they have this kiln site where they used to, make all this ceramic ware for the emperors in China. And a lot of, many places in Jingdezhen, you always find these excavation sites because everywhere you dig, you find some kind of shards from old dynasties, like Song Dynasty, Qing Dynasty, everywhere. It's always there. They still, have, although they have some, they are utilizing machinery to produce a lot of sculptures and all these things, but they still rely on manual, craft and. It's amazing in Jingdezhen. They have so much infrastructure in building all kinds of things that's ceramic. So I met a couple of friends there who are from Jingdezhen. They're really, and they're influenced by contemporary culture, and they are sort of creating this, this new. They're incorporating this new aesthetic into this traditional way of making ceramics, which I found fascinating. So they're utilizing the techniques from like Ming Dynasty and Song Dynasty, but they're really incorporating the pigment as this sort of color schemes from the contemporary culture, these bright colors. So that's me learning how to do press mold. So one of my primary goal of going to Jingdezhen was to find a master sculptor to work with, because when I was looking at how the transformation of Buddha sculptures took place, there's always like, it's like there's this marriage, this collaboration between foreign culture coming into different country, and then there's marriage that takes place between the local culture and the foreign influence, like how in India, from India to China, Korea, Japan. So it was important for me to find a master sculptor to work with, so I can really make something that's sort of a product of this progression of transformation. I wanted to. So I conducted interviews with 5 sculptors in this area, and I ended up working with Mr. Ha. He's this gentleman. He really enjoys smoking, and I don't smoke, so to convince him to work with me, I smoked about a carton. And, he's like, "Oh, you really like smoking." And so he was the one who was able to tell me. He's like, "Oh, so I got my training from this teacher, and this teacher got his training from this teacher, and he was able to tell me this lineage of training." And he was telling me that his style really comes from Doha tradition, but because he moved to Jingdezhen, and now he's sort of able to create this sculpture utilizing the both aesthetics of Jingdezhen and Doha style. So I thought, oh, if he's able to create a sculpture that incorporate 2 different aesthetics, maybe I can introduce anime aesthetics into this sculpture. And he was very open to working with me, and so, how do I introduce a new face to this sculpture? So I had this idea of putting a new anime face on the sculpture. So I sort of regret not taking that many pictures of this, how the face was transforming, because back then I was very self-conscious. I was like, I don't want to come off as like too foreign. If I start taking too many pictures, maybe people think less of me. So I was just, instead of taking pictures, I was smoking too much. But as you can see, there's like, there's like subtlety when it comes to the face. So like other features, they're quite traditional, except for the faces. So there are a lot of collaboration and negotiation that have to take place, because when I come to see him, he'll make the face too traditional, too representational. So I'll have to tell him to ask me to really make them a little more anime-like. So it took about a month to work on this project, just to making this part. And then once that sculpture was done, we had I brought in about like 5 mold makers to produce molds for this sculpture. So there are about 20 parts, plaster molds, to create this sculpture. So this is when the sculpture was all dry. This is made out of porcelain. So right now, this is a shot from the exhibition that's taking place at Argus 2. So along with some of the paintings that I showed you earlier, these remade paintings, in relation to this anime Guanyin, and I built a shrine for this Guanyin sculpture. So it's something you can go inside. So in a kneeling position, you can kneel inside, and I took a video sort of documentation of what it's like inside. But really, if you can, please come to this show. It's quite interesting to look at and go inside. Leuven, you've been inside, right? It's amazing. What about you, Morgan?
It's pretty good.
The reviews are
Very good,
Yeah, see, it's very good. You should try coming to our show. Nate is also showing you me. So it's a Guanyin sculpture housed in this infinity mirror room with sound and these images that I have, they're quite kaleidoscopic, because I wanted to convey this idea of symmetry. Like when you look at Tanka, this Buddhist paintings, there's this sense of symmetry, and I wanted to incorporate it into this experience that you get from going into this sculpture. So there's this relationship between the viewer looking up to the Guanyin and the environment she is in. There's a Korean water moon Guanyin painting that I was looking at, which I thought was interesting because in relation to this sculpture, because when you look at this painting carefully, there's a person kneeling down praying to Guanyin. So this is a scene where Guanyin comes to greet you when you're reincarnated in heaven, and this is where Guanyin comes and pick you up and takes you to the heaven. So this is sort of this entry point to heaven. So there's this exchange of gaze. Well, she's more looking at the ceiling, but yeah. Didn't get it. But anyway, so that's the sculpture painted. And I have a website. If you have time, please stop. Check out my website. And thank you so much for paying attention to my presentation. I see that nobody has fallen asleep, which is great. And if you have any questions, please ask me. And yeah, my home.
Open the floor for questions and answers.
Yeah.
I have two questions. First one is, what does canon mean? You said canon means something?
Oh, so Guanyin. So canon is a Japanese word for Guanyin. Guanyin is one who's always seeing, always hearing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And the other question is, when you were talking about the sculptures, and changing them, you said that what you did was you painted them differently, or you put, so did you actually make the same physical sculpture and just put different paint on it, or do you actually change the sculpture itself?
You mean when the
When you're talking about
Jingdezhen, yeah. Oh, so yeah,
you said
so
that the change was the painting, but did the sculpture itself remain the same? Or,
Oh, yeah, so-
or
okay.
did the actual physical changes and
yeah.
appearance of the sculpture without painting, did that remain the same? And then the changes just came because you used different types of paints or painted it in a different way?
So I guess so during the Cultural Revolution. So I guess when I talked about painting, I talked about in relation to how people were using painting patterns on the sculpture as a way to make old sculptures new, because during the Cultural Revolution, the government banned people from making something old.
But did the,
So
but did the sculptures actually change? Or
Sculpture
just,
didn't-
or just the decoration via
Decoration
painting
changed. Decoration changed. So it's not so much the form that changed; it's more of the paintings that changed. So they found a loophole in how the government defines old or traditional. So they changed the pattern on the sculpture.
By just changing the types of paints and colors of paints?
No,
or by actually
images.
painting like,
No, images on the like fabric, this robe and the pattern on this
I
lion.
see.
You know what I mean? So yeah, that's what happened.
oh, and that was enough to make the
Yeah.
rulers think that
Yeah,
there's really a
this is
fundamental
new.
change?
So I find it quite fascinating. This like how subtle change can update old things in the eyes of the authority.
So then, when that ended, that kind of restriction, then they could just go back to the traditional painting and they have their traditional movements, right?
They can, but then again, even that change is transformation of tradition. Like when you think about tradition, it's always this idea of copying of a copying of it's always a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. And during that time, the subtle changes, subtle introduction of cultural influences, regulations, those things become part of the tradition.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what actually did you do to make this sculpture?
Oh yeah.
So what? I'm sure the idea is yours, but
Yeah,
how
yeah,
much did you actually involve in making this face and this shape?
So my role in creating the sculpture is more of conceptual design and coming up and giving this master sculptor art direction. Like, so I was going to his studio every day, and I'm not a sculptor. I'm a painter.
Yeah.
But I utilize all these different medium because I have a background in advertising, in many aspects of contemporary art, you know, you do play a role as an art director at the same time, you know, being an artist. So yeah, that was my role.
So how much artistic control do you have over this sculpture?
Oh yeah, all of it actually. So from beginning, I specifically chose to work with this sculptor. So not everyone has this specific skill and also willingness to work with new aesthetics. And I had to go there, constantly change the face, the features of the sculpture. So that was my role. I didn't make them myself,
Yeah.
but I was there as a sort of art director.
And so they put the different pieces together. They make the mold.
No, so the sculpture comes first. So sculpture started from the scratch.
Yeah. So who made the sculpture?
So I work with a sculptor. His name is Mr. Ha, and him and his 4 assistants. So Mr. Ha was only making face.
Yeah.
The students were making the features, other features. So it's yeah. So I've been working with four people. So yeah.
So is there a original wooden sculpture on which this thing is made?
No, it was made out of clay
Okay.
first, and then so as you can see, so this thing was the original one, and then this was taken apart when we had to make molds from it.
Mhm.
So take it apart into several parts, make plaster molds out of them.
When your sculptors, please don't do that, you know, when your sculptor, when you were trying to speak, I'm sorry, that does this thing. Speaking with him, was there any, I don't wanna say, concern on his part? Was it a changing event for him to be doing this, transforming it more into a modern look? Did you
So-
have to do some convincing or negotiating?
Yeah. So at first, when I started working with him, you know, I sensed so other people that I interviewed, they had more reluctance to change the form. But Mr. Halsey saw my project as more of a contemporary art challenge, and he was like, challenge accepted. And yeah, he was interesting because I also asked him questions in how he sees his sculptures. Like, does he see his sculptures as purely craft, you know, or what is his relationship to his sculptures? I asked him questions like, do you ever have a situation where you come to a temple where your sculpture is sitting in a temple and you have to pray to it? Are you willing to pray to your own sculpture? And he said, sure, why not? I do that. So to him, sculpture is not just a sculpture, but more exists as this portal to different dimension. Like, so I like the fact that, you know, he was willing to, you know, make changes. I told you about my upbringing as a Buddhist, and when I showed these images to my mother, she was like, "This is outrageous. This is sacred. How could you?" But then again, my dad was more like, "Hey, but you know, if an anime character somehow receives enlightenment, would you think that it deserves to be like this?"
Yes.
But so you know, I get different reactions from people. Sometimes they say, "Oh, how could you do this to a sculpture?" But then again, that's like, but that was the question that bothered me. Like, you know, why do we always have to have this formal stasis when it comes to religious sculptures? So this is my attempt at sort of rebooting this transformation and freeing this form from stasis.
Is this the only copy?
No, I have 4.
So, if necessary, back in Jingdezhen, they could reproduce more.
No, I have no more.
Oh, you have more.
Yeah, but then again, yeah, that's possible. I mean, there could be in Jingdezhen. I met this another artist who made her project in Jingdezhen a couple of years ago. Then 1 year after she did her project, she went back to Jingdezhen and found the market flooded with her project. So actually, I would actually be feel very flattered if this thing turns up somewhere in China without me knowing about it. Like then it really becomes part of this transformation. Like it's not just me making it as a contemporary work. I do have goals for this. Ideally I would like to place this in a temple, a proper temple, and with this updated shrine that I built, which you would all have to go check it out yourselves.
Well, just like your historical presentation, who knows 1,000 years from now, yours could be one of those transitional photographs that says, in the old days, it went from male to female, and then you go to anime, and then to whatever.
I'm so glad you see this.
I don't think it'll be 1,000 years. I think the world's moving much faster.
Oh, yeah.
I envision the movie, you go back now and they're all around.
Oh, yeah.
And the sculptors are taking it off like that. It's a beautiful idea.
Thank you.
What language you're using when interacting with the sculpture?
Oh, so initially, I was trying to use body language. Didn't get me very far. There were a couple of friends I made in Jingdezhen who were designers in Jingdezhen. They were utilizing Jingdezhen's infrastructure to produce their work. So I'm really grateful to their help. They came to the shop. So there were like four friends that I made. They would rotate every day and come to work with me. So communicated in Chinese. Not me, but I don't know.
So the friend you made knows Korean or English?
No English.
I have a question about anime. You had drawn that parallel between, I think it was the Korean depiction of Guanyin, right, with the person kneeling.
Oh yeah.
And so you had drawn that parallel between that and the situation like the viewer finds themselves in this shrine. And so this Guanyin is to welcome the person upon reincarnation into heaven. And I wondered if you had anything or any thoughts about like anime or an anime version of this Guanyin that is a more like suitable form to welcome somebody. Or I wonder like what your thoughts are on, being welcomed by this anime. If you have any, I'm curious.
Well,
if you understand the question, I don't know if I'm articulating it.
No. Yeah, I'll be happy. I'll be happy to be greeted when I die with this anime Guanyin. I'll be like, damn, I was right. This is what Guanyin looks like. But yeah, I mean, I think that this, depiction of Guanyin, this anime aesthetic, this is what I primarily use as a visual language in my work, for many reasons, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I just wondered if it was like another type of portal or something. Like, now there's this statue, but now there's anime
heaven.
overlay, so if it serves as a different kind of portal or to like a different kind of audience or something.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, about, anime representing this, our contemporary people's removal from the reality psychologically, how we find beauty in such weirdly proportioned things. Perhaps it is fitting that I be greeted with this being that has, otherworldly features, or idealized
You mentioned that you changed the design of the face. I imagine some of that has to do with your own decisions about how you want to look and, discussions with the sculptor or master sculptor. But what, either before you started or after, what were some of, when you choose an anime face, right, there's no just one anime face.
No.
There's also expressions.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the aesthetic or expressive features that you were trying to translate from an imagined Guanyin to this anime Guanyin? Because you could have had the kind of eyes open, a big eyes open kind of Guanyin, big eyes open like these, but in the one that we see in the sculpture, those big eyes feature doesn't come as much. So I wonder what kind of features you preserved, and then which ones you tried to accentuate.
So, yeah, that was also one of the challenges that I had to deal with when choosing the right face, right features. So that face is actually like a combination of all these reference images that you see. We went through different phases, adjusting facial features. I was, my goal was to try this idea of some compassion and peacefulness through this anime face. And something also I want to point out is that, so right now this Guanyin sculpture exists as a sculpture, just a sculpture. It's not a proper religious sculpture because it didn't go through the process of consecration. So this is, there's this, so after consecration, that's when you actually paint the eyes. So I want these sculptures to go through proper consecration process where you have all the rituals, and that's when you paint these eyes. So right now this exists as sculpture, but then again, in the future I would like to have it go through sort of consecration and properly have the eyes painted.
How would you have the eyes painted?
What?
How would you have the eyes painted? Or do you have an idea?
It'd be very anime style, but something I also have to keep in mind is that this, as you saw in this water moon Guanyin painting, the gaze that Guanyin has is very, it's there, and the gaze is there, but it's not there at the same time. There's like this half closed eyes, and there's some very subtle gaze that's happening. So I have to try to convey that.